my adoptive millionaire family humiliated me, I decided to leave the house and invest. I returned with more money than them. I grew up as the adopted kid in a millionaire family, but not in the Cinderella kind of way people imagine. It was more like being a permanent guest in a house that wasn't really mine. They never said it out loud, but everything, every gesture, every comment, every look, reminded me that I didn't belong to their world. They joke about how people without money think differently. And even though they said it laughing, I always felt the jab was meant for me. I learned pretty early that in that house, money wasn't just a tool, it was a social ranking system, and I was at the lowest tier. Despite all that, I wasn't resentful, I was just observant. While they talked about luxury cars and vacations, I found myself watching videos about online businesses, side hustles, e commerce, crypto projects, anything that sounded like a potential escape route. I didn't want to be rich to prove anything to them. I just wanted control over my life. I didn't want to depend on people who treated money like a leash. By the time I turned 19, the tension in the house felt like a fog that never lifted. Every decision I made was questioned, every ambition mocked. One day, after a dinner where my future without a trust fund was the joke of the night, I decided I'd had enough. I grabbed a small bag, the few clothes I had, and the 40 something dollars I'd saved from random gigs, and I left. I moved to a neighboring state, not far enough to start a whole new life, but far enough that I could breathe. The apartment I found wasn't impressive. It smelled like dust and old paint. The heating barely worked, and the walls were thin enough for me to hear my neighbor coughing at 3 a.m. But for the first time in my life, it was mine, and that mattered more than anything. I took whatever job I could get, cleaning, delivering food, stocking shelves, anything that put a little money in my pocket. Most people would have seen it as a downgrade from living in a millionaire mansion. But to me, it felt like stepping out of someone else's shadow. One night, after a long shift, I was scrolling online with my cheap secondhand laptop, and I stumbled onto a crypto forum. I'd seen crypto before, but this time, something clicked differently. Maybe it was the freedom behind the concept, or the idea that you could build wealth starting from almost nothing. I started reading everything I could find: white papers, beginner guides, trading strategies. I wasn't trying to get rich quickly, I just wanted to understand. With my first $20 that I could risk without ending up starving, I bought a small amount of a coin that seemed promising. It wasn't a big investment, but it felt like planting a seed. I watched the charts during my lunch breaks, learned the difference between hype and technology, and slowly started to see patterns. Over months, that tiny seed grew. I wasn't making millions, but I was learning how to think like someone who understood money, risk, timing, and markets. As I juggled work and research, I eventually got good enough to make consistent profit. Not luck, not gambling, but informed decisions. I diversified, reinvested, learned from my losses, and treated every mistake like tuition I had to pay. Crypto wasn't just an investment, it became my financial education. By the time I was 21, I wasn't rich, but I had built something with my own hands, something that didn't rely on anyone's permission. The real turning point came when I realized I didn't feel fear anymore. I had savings, income streams, and a plan. For the first time, money wasn't something used against me. It was something I controlled. And that gave me a confidence I'd never felt before. A couple of years later, I went back to visit the family who adopted me. Not for revenge, not to brag, nothing dramatic. I just wanted closure. When I walked into their house, everything looked the same: the marble floors, the expensive furniture, the cold atmosphere. But the dynamic was different. I wasn't the insecure kid they used to talk down to. I carried myself differently, and they noticed immediately. They asked about my life, carefully, politely, almost cautiously. I told them the truth. I moved out, worked, learned about crypto, invested, built my own stability. I didn't exaggerate or romanticize it. I just explained it like someone describing their job. What surprised me was how quiet they were while I talked. For once, no one interrupted or made jokes. When I left, I realized I didn't feel bitterness or pride. I just felt free. Financial independence gave me something that money in that house never did: identity. I wasn't the adopted kid anymore. I was someone who took control of their life with less than $50 and a stubborn sense of self worth. And honestly, that meant more to me than any mansion ever could.